In 1999, a man walked into a boardroom and said something that changed what you eat forever. He wasn't a chef. He wasn't a doctor. He was the former CEO of Marlboro. His name was Jeffrey Bible, and the company he just took over was Kraft Foods. Kraft at the time owned over 70 of the most recognizable food brands in America. Oreo, Velveeta, Oscar Mayer, Jell-O, all of them under one roof. And Bible had one goal, the same goal he had at Marlboro: make the product impossible to put down. But here's what nobody told you. He didn't need to invent anything new. The science already existed. It had been sitting in food labs for 40 years. And it all started with a single question: how much sugar makes a human being want more? The man who answered that question was a scientist named Howard Moskowitz. In the 1970s, Moskowitz was hired by the U.S. Army not to build weapons, to figure out why soldiers stopped eating their rations in the field. The Army thought it was a flavor problem. Moskowitz thought it was something else entirely. He ran hundreds of experiments, different concentrations of sugar, salt, and fat in the same foods. And he found something that changed food science forever. There is a precise point, a specific concentration of sugar, fat, or salt where human pleasure peaks. Not too little, not too much. Exactly right. He called it the Bliss Point. And here's what makes it terrifying. At the Bliss Point, your brain doesn't just enjoy the food. It stops sending the signal that tells you to stop. The feeling of fullness gets overridden, your hand just keeps reaching. Moskowitz didn't think much of it at the time. He published his findings and moved on. But the food industry read every word. By the 1980s, Moskowitz had a new client list: Pepsi, Campbell's Soup, General Foods. They weren't hiring him to make food healthier. They were hiring him to find the bliss point for every single product. And he found it, over and over again. But this was only the surface, because the Bliss Point was just one weapon in a much larger arsenal. In 1999, the same year Jeffrey Bible took over Kraft, something happened behind closed doors. The CEOs of the 11 largest food companies in America met in Minneapolis. Kraft, Nabisco, Coca-Cola, Mars, Procter & Gamble, all in one room. One of the executives stood up and said, "We need to talk about obesity." He presented data. Obesity rates were climbing. Kids were getting sick. The science was pointing directly at processed food. He suggested the companies voluntarily reduce sugar, salt, and fat in their products. The room went quiet. Then the CEO of Kraft stood up, and he said one sentence that ended the meeting: "Don't talk to me about nutrition. Talk to me about taste, because that's what sells." The meeting ended, nothing changed, and the industry accelerated in the opposite direction. But here's where it gets worse. Because the Bliss Point wasn't even the most powerful tool they had. In the 1980s, food scientists discovered something they called Vanishing Caloric Density. It works like this: take a Cheeto, put it in your mouth. It dissolves almost instantly. Before your brain can register that you ate anything, your brain tracks calories through texture and resistance. No signal. So it sends the message: still hungry, eat more. This is why you can eat an entire bag of chips and feel like you had nothing. It's not weakness. It's not a lack of willpower. It's engineering. The texture was designed in a laboratory to bypass the exact mechanism your brain uses to know when to stop. And they knew the research was internal, the memos existed, they knew exactly what they were doing. A 1,986 internal report from R.J. Reynolds, the tobacco company that also owned food brands, stated clearly, in order to be successful, a product must be habit-forming, not tasty, not nutritious, habit-forming. The same word they used for cigarettes. But there's one more layer. And this one affects you every single day without you ever noticing. It's called sensory-specific satiety. Your brain gets bored of one flavor very quickly. After a few bites of the same thing, the pleasure signal drops. You naturally stop eating. This is why you stop eating plain rice, but can always find room for dessert. Food scientists call it opening a new sensory channel. So they engineered products that constantly shift flavor, texture, and sensation as you eat. First sweet, then salty, then a crunch, then it melts. Your brain never gets bored, it never sends the stop signal. Doritos alone went through 59 iterations before launch. Not for taste, for this exact effect. You weren't born unable to stop eating, you were handed a product scientifically optimized to make stopping impossible. And the worst part? The solution they offered you was willpower. Just eat less, just try harder, just have more discipline. While the people selling you the food had a 200-person neuroscience team working to make sure you were never fighting yourself. You were fighting an industry with 50 years of research and billions of dollars. And you didn't even know there was a fight. The next time you reach for something and can't stop, it's not a character flaw. It's the Bliss Point. It's vanishing density. It's sensory-specific satiety being bypassed by design. You're not weak. You're just the last person in the room to find out the game was rigged. Now you know.